Have you ever just stopped and asked yourself, am I living a good life? It sounds simple, but that one question is the engine behind literally thousands of years of philosophy. So in this explainer, we're going to unpack the very essence of ethics. We'll explore some powerful ideas from ancient Greece all the way to the East, all to get a little closer to answering that huge fundamental question. All right, so here's our game plan. First, we're going to zero in on that core question of ethics. Then, and this is super important, we'll clear up the confusion between ethics and morality. From there, we'll dive headfirst into Aristotle's amazing idea of flourishing and see how it stacks up against the major Eastern philosophies. And finally, we'll pull it all together so you can start thinking about your own moral blueprint. So let's just get right to the absolute heart of the matter. You see, every single complex ethical debate, every dense philosophical argument, it all boils down to one single foundational question. This right here. How should one live? It doesn't get much bigger than that, does it? This question, famously explored by thinkers like Aristotle, is really the engine of all ethical inquiry. And it's not just some dusty old academic exercise. It forces every single one of us to really look in the mirror and confront our values, our purpose, and the principles that guide, well, everything we do. Okay, before we go any further, we have to get our terms straight. We're going to talk about two words that people throw around all the time as if they mean the same thing: ethics and morality. But in philosophy, they're actually pointing to two very different ways of thinking about right and wrong. Let's break it down. So here's a really simple way to think about it. Morality is the list of rules. It's the what, things like don't steal. Ethics, on the other hand, is the philosophy behind those rules. It's the why. Ethics is the framework that asks, wait a minute, why is stealing wrong in the first place? It's all about questioning and trying to understand the deep foundation of our moral beliefs. And this chart just makes that distinction crystal clear with a perfect real-world example. Just look at the difference between a professional code and a personal belief. A lawyer's code of ethics requires them to defend their client no matter what, but their personal morality might be screaming inside that this person is guilty. That tension right there, that's where this philosophical distinction becomes incredibly real and often really, really difficult. Okay, let's shift gears and talk about our first major framework, and it comes from one of the absolute giants of Western philosophy, Aristotle. You see, he wasn't just interested in single right or wrong actions. He wanted to figure out what makes for a truly good life. The core concept, the big idea in Aristotle's ethics, is eudaimonia. Now, it's often translated as happiness, but honestly, that's a pretty bad translation. It's not about feeling giddy for a moment. For Aristotle, eudaimonia is about flourishing. It's the state of living up to your absolute full potential as a human being. Think of it like the grand prize, the ultimate achievement for a life lived with purpose and excellence. So how in the world do we get to this state of flourishing? Well, Aristotle used this really simple but powerful line of logic. He asked, what is the one thing that makes humans unique? Plants are alive, animals have senses. What's our thing? He said our unique function, our human superpower, is our ability to reason. So it follows that a good life is one spent using our reason to its absolute fullest potential. And to do anything well, you need virtue. But what does it even mean to be virtuous? That sounds kind of lofty, right? But this is where Aristotle gets super practical. He argued that virtue isn't about following some rigid, unbending set of rules. No, for him, it's all about finding the perfect balance. And this slide just illustrates his famous doctrine of the mean perfectly. For Aristotle, every virtue is a golden mean. It's that sweet spot right between two extremes, which are both vices. Take courage, for example. It's the perfect balance between the vice of cowardice, which is too much fear, and the vice of rashness, which is too little fear. See, virtue isn't about being perfect. It's about having the practical wisdom to find the right balance in any given situation. Now, Aristotle's focus on the individual is really a cornerstone of Western thought, but it's not the only way to think about living a good life. So now let's pivot and contrast his very individual-focused view with two really powerful ethical traditions from the East. And right here, we see a fundamental split in focus. For Aristotle, the ideal is the strong, virtuous individual, kind of like a sturdy oak tree standing on its own. But in Confucian ethics, the ideal is more like a bamboo forest. All the stalks are strong, but they're also interconnected, they depend on each other. For Confucius, you can't be a good person in a vacuum. Goodness is defined by your relationships as a parent, a child, a neighbor. So the ultimate goal isn't just personal flourishing, it's creating a harmonious society. And now let's turn to Indian philosophy for a third, really powerful lens: Dharma. Dharma brings in the idea of duty as the absolute core of an ethical life. It's not just about who you are, or even your relationships. It's about fulfilling your specific role and your responsibilities. The thinking is that everyone has a unique part to play, and a good life is one spent fulfilling those duties to help maintain the balance of the entire cosmos. Okay, so we've looked at the individual, the community, and duty, three incredibly powerful frameworks from totally different parts of the world. But these aren't just history lessons, right? The real question is, how can we actually use these ideas to build our own moral blueprint, right here, right now? And the key insight here is that these frameworks are not mutually exclusive at all. They're like different lenses you can use to examine your life and your choices. You can ask Aristotle's question, who do I want to become? You can ask Confucius's question, how do my actions create harmony or discord? And you can ask the question of Dharma, what is my duty here? Using all three gives you a much richer, a much more complete moral picture. And that leaves us with one last question, just for you to think about. When you think about what it means to live a good life, where does your focus naturally go? Is it on becoming the best possible version of yourself? Is it on contributing to the good of your community? Or is it on fulfilling the duties and responsibilities that you feel are yours? Just thinking about that balance, that's the first step toward living a more examined and a more ethical life.